Hi, my name is Tiffany Nestle, and I'm the research manager of the Genetics of Taste Lab here at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. And I get to talk to you a little bit about today about what I've recently been studying, which is smell. For the last 10 years, I have been focused on taste, so this is something new and exciting for me. And the more I dove into it, the more exciting I realized smell really is. So today we're going to talk about how smells trigger memories and how language plays a role in that and how we can use that to improve our lives. So scientists used to believe that we had about 10,000, or we could detect about 10,000 different odors. And coming from the taste world where there's 5, that sounds really impressive. But recently they've recalculated, and now they actually think that we can detect closer to 1 trillion distinct odors. And that's really important because smell is considered to be our oldest sense and is the primary way that our ancestors would have interacted with the environment. So they use smell to be able to pick what foods to eat, who to mate with, different toxins, and to avoid predators. Now, humans have about 350 smell or olfaction genes, which sounds impressive, but compared to mice and dogs, which have over 1,000 and are known for their ability to smell, it's not that many. But something really cool is it looks like we used to have over 1,000 also. But as we began to rely more on our sense of sight than our sense of smell, many of those genes stopped functioning and became what we call a pseudogene, which means it's still in our DNA. We can still sort of see it, but they don't work. Now, what's really interesting about becoming a visual culture instead of a smell-related culture is our visual recall is not very good comparatively. So the accuracy of our visual recall is only 50% accurate at 3 months. And this is why you hear sometimes in court cases or things about eyewitness testimony and that it's not very reliable. It's because it's not. 3 months later, by the time you be getting to court, you're no longer able to recall things as accurately. In comparison, our olfactory recall or ability to recall a smell is still at 65% accuracy a year after an event. And one of the reasons that we think that this recall is so strong is because the olfactory bulb, which is the smell center in your brain, has a direct link to both your hippocampus and your amygdala. So that's how come a smell can so instantly trigger an intense emotion or a detailed memory. And one of the things that I found really fun when I was preparing for this talk was I got to go to the Littleton Historic Museum's The Way We Played exhibit. Now, unfortunately, it's gone. It just closed on the 3rd, so I can't recommend it, but it was a cool exhibit where they looked at toys for the last 100 years. And one of the things that they had there was a section called the aroma of play. And when you open up one of the boxes that you see, a smell would come out, would be released from that is associated with your childhood. And I was really surprised. A couple I couldn't name, but the ones that I could, I was instantly transported back to my childhood and a lot of different memories. What I found interesting about it, though, was when I talk with my siblings or my childhood friends about memories, we're often talking about one-time events and things that are unique situations. What this triggered, these smells, were more of our habitual actions. So like the smell of grass brought back memories of playing in the backyard or playing tag with my friends or recess, like when we run around on the grass. And so they were very specific but more general memories. And so it was really fun to see what they brought up. And I thought it'd be kind of fun for us to do here too. So I'm going to bring up several different odors that were common in my childhood. And if they're familiar for you as well, go ahead and type that into the chat. And if they're not, there's 2 things to know. Smells vary by culture and generation. So if you didn't grow up in the suburbs of California in the 80s and 90s, these ones may not resonate with you. And that's okay. Put that in there too, because if you grew up in a different place or a different time, a different background, somebody else might resonate with yours. So according to a lot of websites and things, just when I was looking it up, one of the most nostalgic smells from childhood is a newly opened box of crayons. But I found that wasn't my big one. My big one was the Mr. Sketch scented markers. So I can vividly remember both like the cherry and the blueberry, which were my favorite smells, and the chocolate and the licorice, which were my least favorite smells. But all the ones in between, they've kind of gotten lost over the years. And thinking through these and being in the classroom brought back freshly shaved or sharpened number 2 pencils. Do any of you remember that? It brings back so many memories of the first day of school, of kind of nervousness around taking a test. All kinds of different memories flooded back with that. Leaving the classroom and writing utensils, how about the rubber bouncy balls that you'd play with during recess or dodgeball? How about a cush ball? A newly opened canister of Play-Doh? Or how about blasting cats? Some other ones that I don't have pictures of, but that seem to trigger a lot of memories for people, especially my generation or slightly after. Dr. Pepper's Lip Smackers, bubble tape, bubblegum amoxicillin, or Vicks Vapor Rub. So go ahead and type in the chat anything that comes to your mind if you had those memories or if these are completely different from what you've experienced. And that, again, can be cultural. For example, I didn't grow up on a farm. As I said, I was in the suburbs. So these smells, cows, manure, fertilizer, hay, they're not particularly pleasant for me. But to most of the people I know who grew up on farms or in rural communities, this is home. This is fresh air. There's no pollution. There's no nothing. It's just the open vastness. So they perceive it very differently than I do. So it'd be fun. Go ahead and put in the chat if there are any smells that you love from childhood that other people don't find pleasant, or ones that you don't find pleasant, but a lot of people seem to. It's just interesting to see how different we all are. Now, as much as smells can evoke really strong memories really quickly, we're actually not great at identifying them. Some studies have showed that people can only identify about 50% of common household items when just using the smell. And these are things like peanut butter and coffee, things we use every day. But if we give somebody a multiple choice option of what it might be, that their correctness goes up dramatically. And this points to the idea that language is actually one of our biggest challenges when it comes to odors and smells. And there's a reason for that. Unlike our other senses, we always attribute an odor to its source, or we usually do. For example, we call something lemony or something rosy or floral. We call something skunky, and it's immediately identified to something. This makes a lot of sense, but isn't actually how we process our other senses. When it comes to other things, we use some of the attributes related to it. For example, if I say that something's clear and rectangular, you don't instantly know what I'm talking about, but it could be ice cubes, it could be office windows, or what it really was an aquarium. And it turns out this is how we process all of our other senses as well. For example, sounds could be high-pitched, even if its source was an opera singer, a bird, or a tea kettle. And there's some other examples on the screen for our other senses. Now, while most people process smells the way that I was just talking about, relating them to their source, there are a few people groups that actually do this attribute definition. And so I'm going to put up a quote by Asifa Majid, who works with Jahai people in Malay, a little bit about how they use smells. I'm going to apologize now because I'm probably going to mispronounce several of the words. So the Jahai group people have 12 different words that they refer to different types of smells, just like we have color groups like red, blue, and green. And these are unique to smell. So hajet is the Jahai word for the common smell between tiger, rubber tree sap, rotten meat, carrion, feces, burnt hair, old sweat, and lighter gas, just like red is the common color for lots of objects in English. And as I go through that list, I'm frustrated because I can almost smell it. Not quite, but I'm so close because I've experienced most of those once or twice. But part of that is I don't have the experience with those smells, and part is I don't have the vocabulary to link all of that together. And there's a couple of reasons for this, and it goes back to the brain. So the olfactory bulb, or again, the smell center, is directly linked to our language center. And you would think that that would be an advantage and give us more words. But actually, because the information gets there so quickly, it's still crude and unprocessed. Whereas by the time audio or visual information gets there, it has had a chance to be refined. So a great metaphor came from Wired magazine on this, that smell information is like a couple notes scribbled on the back of a napkin, whereas audio and visual information is like a polished rough draft. Again, it comes down to we don't have the language for it, but we can work on improving this. And we do that through something called smell training. This was originally created to help anosmics, or people who can't smell something. Sometimes it's specific to one smell, or sometimes it's the complete loss of smell, regain their olfactory sense. So it's a prescribed protocol where people actively sniff and concentrate on certain odors and have to put vocabulary to it. They have to identify it and put words to it. This is currently being used to help COVID patients recover their sense of smell if they've had the long-term loss. So it's very commonly used right now and is in several different headlines. But it's so successful that they actually did one study using two groups of older people. The control group was given Sudoku puzzles, and they filled those out twice a day for the duration of the study. The experimental group, who they were testing, was given the smell training twice a day. And what they found surprised them a little bit. And that was that the group that received the smell training actually had better olfactory functioning. That's less surprising, but also better verbal functioning and remarkably higher overall well-being as well. So this just kind of goes to show that something really simple can have a profound impact in our life, and that there are a lot of ramifications if we work on combining our language with our smell that could relate to our overall health. And I just found that so cool, so simple, and so fascinating. And I wanted to share that with you today. I'm going to be flipping to pages of references and resources. And then with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Memory, who's going to navigate any questions that we have. So thank you for listening, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Awesome. Hello, everybody. This is Memory. I work in the marketing department here at the museum. And like always, I'm just popping in to read your questions to Tiffany. So just drop them in the comments. I'm looking at Facebook, I'm looking at YouTube. So if you're viewing us on any of those channels, I will see your questions. How about we just start with some of the answers to your first questions that you had, Tiffany, about what smells do you remember from your childhood, and what smells maybe did you like but other people didn't like. We have some answers. Brandy says she remembers Vicks Vapor Rub. I remember that one too, rubbing that on your chest, and definitely childhood. We got another one from Brandy who says she remembers Dairy Farms, glue, and ramen noodles. That's a good one too.
Glue is a great one. I didn't even think about glue.
I didn't think about glue either.
That's fantastic.
These are really, really
good. One of the things I love is now being a mom, I'm starting to experience like the crayons and the markers on a different level. And so like anytime I open up a new Play-Doh, I'm actually doing that on a regular basis right now. And it's great what comes back to mind.
Well, I am not seeing any questions just yet. Okay. If I don't see any, I'm going to ask one, and then we'll wrap it on up. So, I thought I saw something. Maybe not now. Drop your questions in there. Okay. So, I always like to ask, well, what's one thing that we can take, one fun fact that we can take from your presentation and take it with us this weekend and share it with our friends, to make us look like we're super smart and like we know a whole lot. What's just one fun fact that we can take with us?
Okay, well, since there haven't been questions and I've got a little time, I'm going to go into a little bit longer fact. And that's that we actually smell in two different ways. So we have something called orthonasal smell. That's where like somebody hands us a rose and we're sniffing it and we breathe in through the nose and smell it that way. But we also have something called retronasal smell. And that's when you put something in your mouth and you've chewed on it and the odors go from your mouth up to your nasal cavity. And so why that's so cool and so important is there are a lot of things that we attribute to being taste that are actually smell. So if you don't like the food cilantro, it's actually your sense of smell. It's usually after you've chewed on it, the odor molecules go up and they bind to your lysis or your soap receptors. And so that's what can make it seem soapy to you. It's not taste, it's smell that's the issue. So that's one that I think is really cool.
Okay, yeah, I've been told, I remember back in high school, my anatomy teacher would always say, what you smell, you really taste, and what you taste, you smell. So, you know, if you smell something bad, in a way, you're kind of tasting that too. And so is that still kind of how we're thinking?
Yeah, they're very closely linked. Yeah. So it's usually, yes, your smell's gonna kind of color what you're eating a lot of the time. But even just earlier today, and kind of going back to that last study I was referencing, a lot of people as they get older feel like they've lost their sense of taste. But when I delve a little further with them, they usually can still detect that things are salty or sweet or bitter. So they still have taste. It's the smell that's diminished. And so that's where the smell training is so cool, because there's actually a lot of evidence that it can help improve some of that balance and well-being.
Interesting. Well, thank you so much, Tiffany. If you are watching or you're watching this later on and you think of any more questions, feel free to still drop them under there. I will happily send them to Tiffany and she'll get an answer for you. So thank you. Like always, we'll be right back here next Thursday at 12 with Science Division Live. Thank you so much, Tiffany.
Thank you. Have a great day. Take care, everybody.